I learned like serious road rage when I was making deliveries for Ovenly.
I've had someone stop me while I was driving the Ovenly van and say, "Hey, you," and I roll down the window. I'm like, do you own this company that's Ovenly? And I said, yes. And he's like, that is a great name. You are awesome. And I was like, okay, this is the best 5 a.m. delivery I've ever had.
I'm Agatha Kulaga.
And I'm Erin Patinkin.
And we're from Ovenly, based in Greenpoint, Brooklyn.
And today we're going to be making a pumpkin pie with a toasted cinnamon marshmallow fluff.
So we're going to be starting with a pastry dough for a all butter, all-purpose flour pastry pie dough crust. We have 1.25 cups of all-purpose flour. This is 1/2 cup of cubed butter, and it's ice cold. So we freeze it for about 30 minutes before we actually use it. And it's really important to use cold ingredients. We're going to add a little bit of salt and then a tablespoon of sugar. We're going to put that in the food processor and then just process it and then finish the rest on the counter. So what we want to do is just mix the dry ingredients really quickly to just combine them in the food processor. So we've got the flour, the sugar, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. All right, so that's processed. And now we're going to add the butter. You don't want to just throw a stick of butter in there. You want the butter to be cubed because the smaller the cubes are, the quicker this will take to process. You want to just pulse very quickly and stop in between to make sure you're not over-processing, because if you over-process, you're kind of fucked. All right. If you're unsure, you want to look at it. I like to actually stick my hand in and see where it's at. And this, to me, looks like it's ready to put in the ice water. This is 1/4 cup of ice water. We're probably not going to use the whole thing, so I'm just going to add in a little bit.
It's not going to look like a ball. It's going to just hold together with your fingers.
And I could already see here that the dough is coming together. That's exactly how much water we need. And you always want to make sure to have some extra flour around so that you can flour your surface, and we're going to turn it out onto the counter.
So we both grew up baking pies. My grandparents were immigrants. Agatha's parents are from Poland. And
Immigrants.
So there were, we just grew up making these flaky pie doughs. That's really an Eastern European thing.
I used to sit alongside my grandmother, and she would just do this all day long. And I just remember she always smelled like butter. Always. Like, she never smelled like anything else. She just smelled like fatty butter, and I loved it. What I'm going to do is just knead it fairly quickly. I'm just going to use the palm of my hand because this is a cool part of my hand. I'm just going to press it down like this, knead it a little bit.
It's really important that it's all holding together because we're going to roll it later. So if you have a lot of little bits kind of falling out, then just give it a little knead again.
What we're going to do is just wrap it in saran wrap. We're going to flatten it into a 6-inch disc, and that's only to make rolling it out easier so that you're not overworking the dough once you're rolling it, and that's it. We're going to stick this in the fridge.
So we want to make sure we refrigerate it for at least an hour before rolling it. What happens is that allows the gluten to relax, and it'll make it a more flexible dough, which we're going to need when we roll it out.
When did you guys first meet?
7 years ago.
Almost 7.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And where?
At a food book club.
Food-focused book club.
Yeah. We literally met a week later, had coffee, and started a business.
It's
Sure,
true.
let's do it.
And then we decided to start a high-end bar snack company. Yeah, so our first client was like, would you bake in the morning? Because I can't find good wholesale baked goods. And so then we started walking, or I was G-training, pastries 2 days a week to this client no longer exists. And we really thought that bar snacks, packaged bar snacks, were the niche market. That
we're gonna make $1 million trillion. That didn't
retire
happen.
by the time we're like 35. Didn't happen.
And everyone was like, will you make us more scones?
It never was more than 1% of our sales.
Yeah. The dough has been rested, and now we're gonna roll it out to fit it into our pie pan. And you wanna use a good amount of flour just to make sure that the dough doesn't stick to the counter. Throw some more flour on there. We're gonna use a rolling pin. What I like to do is give it a few pounds like this, because then you're just rolling it out less. So what I'm going to do is roll from the inside to out on the pie dough, and then we're gonna give it a quarter turn and keep doing that until we roll it out into 12 inches.
And the quarter turn is helpful because it ensures that the dough doesn't stick to the counter. You don't need a ruler to measure 12 inches. You can just take that pie plate and put it right over to measure it. And if you have about an inch, inch and a half overhang, then it's perfect.
All right, we've got the dough rolled out. What I'm going to do is just fold it in half. You can even fold it again in quarters to transfer the pie dough into the pie pan. And you just want to make sure you have a little bit of overhang. If you don't, you could always do some patchwork.
Now we like to use the full crust, so we just fold it over and shape it for the edges. This is a 9.5-inch pie plate, but if you have an 8-inch pie plate or something like that, you can cut off some of the edges like Agatha's doing.
Just make sure it's sort of tucked into the edges of the pie plate. And here, it's a little thin, so what I'm actually going to do is just add a little bit in there. So there's that, and then you can get fancy with it. You can either use a fork to just crimp the edges, or you can do something like this and get a little designy with it.
Yeah, you just take your thumb and forefinger and press it together.
Like this.
You're basically making a triangle.
And there you've got a beautiful pie dough, ready for some pumpkin pie. Ooh, just kidding. There we go. It's better now. We are going to stick this in the freezer for about 30 minutes just so that it firms up. We pulled out our prepared pie crust from the freezer. We're going to add an egg wash onto the edges of the pie crust. It'll give it a nice golden tint to it once it's baking. This is just an egg yolk with a little bit of cream in it. And so we're just gonna brush the edges, and I like to make sure that I'm getting the outside edges of the crust as well.
A good way to measure that egg wash is just a tablespoon of heavy cream per egg yolk. So we're gonna just lay the parchment straight into the pie dough. And you wanna make sure that it overhangs on the pie crust.
These are pie weights. You can also use dried beans.
Pasta.
Pasta.
Yeah, pretty much.
Dried pasta, not wet pasta. All right, so we got some pie weights in there. That'll keep it down. That'll keep the pastry from actually fluffing up. And we are going to blind bake this sucker. So 20 to 25 minutes. And we've got the oven preheated at 425.
So now onto the filling, which is about the easiest thing to make in this recipe. All of the ingredients can essentially go in at the same time. The thing I'm gonna add first though is the brown sugar, because I like to make sure that they're in little lumps, and we don't want little crunchy lumps of brown sugar in the filling. And then you just add at will. 3 eggs, 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. I'm gonna break those up just a little bit. And then I'm gonna add 1 can or 2 cups of pumpkin. And you know, a lot of bakers debate whether or not you should make your own pumpkin puree or use canned. I prefer to use Libby's canned pumpkin. It's actually a old heritage style pumpkin grown on one farm in Morton, Illinois. They harvest it in September, they pack it by November, and it's not grown again till the next year. And it was specifically designed for pumpkin pie, and I find it to be perfect. And a lot of our baker friends think so too. So that's my preference. So to this, I'm gonna add some cinnamon, a little allspice, ginger. I'm gonna stir that up just a little bit. I've added most of my spices except for my nutmeg. I prefer freshly ground nutmeg. You can use ground, but this just has such a great flavor. So I'm gonna do about 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. I'm just gonna eyeball it. You don't have to be precise with all of your measurements for the spice. It's to taste, really. And then I'm just gonna add about 1/2 teaspoon of salt.
And a shot of vanilla.
And then I'm gonna add the rind of a lemon. And I really like the lemon in the pumpkin pie because it really brightens it up. I find without the citrus, it tastes a little flat. So I always put a little lemon zest into my pie. And then I'm gonna add in 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream. And then we're just gonna whisk this all together. How easy is that? Pretty easy.
Yeah.
The crust is almost finished being blind baked. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna pull it out of the oven, and we're gonna fill it, and we're gonna pop it right back in the oven.
So we have our blind baked pie crust. Gonna pull out the pie weights from here.
And to prevent the crust from getting too brown, once we're done filling it, we're actually gonna cover the edges with tin foil. We're gonna bake it for about 20 minutes with that tin foil on top, and then remove the tin foil and bake it for 20 to 25 minutes longer. We baked that crust at 425. We were reducing the temperature to 350 now, and we're gonna bake it at 350 for the rest of the time until the filling looks set and a little bit cracked. So now we're gonna make the cinnamon fluff topping, which is delicious on the pie or by the spoonful. It's so good. We're gonna take corn syrup, light corn syrup, and 1 egg white with a little bit of salt, and we're gonna mix it on high for 5 minutes until it doubles in volume. It's gonna really increase in volume. Now that it's doubled in volume, I'm just gonna add the powdered sugar and the cinnamon. And we're gonna mix it on low for just a second so the sugar doesn't fly out of the mixer. We're gonna increase the speed and add the vanilla. And then mix that again on high for about 2 minutes. All right, so now that we've made our fluff, we're gonna top our pie. And this is my favorite part because it means using fire, which is really fun. I really like using the self-releasing scoop because this is so sticky and it just makes it a lot easier. And then I'm just gonna spread it so I can see about 1 inch of the pie. And you know, this is a liquid, so it's not, you can't get it super perfect around the edges, but it's not gonna matter because as you see, we're gonna be burning it.
This is the best
part. So this is just like a marshmallow. I like making it pretty dark, so I like it to be black. I'm actually gonna go around the edges first, and what that's gonna do for me is it's gonna prevent it from spreading all to the edge of the crust. And once I do that, I'm gonna get the rest of the fluff. And you know, what I like to do is it's not gonna be totally consistent around the whole top. I kind of like it to have those little burn marks and the little brown marks because I think it's so pretty.
Cracked.
And that's it. The pie's done. It's ready to eat.
You guys ready? Looks good.
Look at that.
I'm just gonna taste this to make sure it came out.
Yeah, quality control, very important.
It's fucking delicious.
Awesome. Pumpkin pie with toasted cinnamon fluff. Yep. Still really good.
The pumpkin is the perfect consistency too. It's like it firmed up in the oven just like we wanted it to, and you can see the crust is golden and perfect. Oh my God.
So flaky and delicious.
I haven't had this since last October.
Yeah, pie success.